I just hello, hello. Welcome to Talk Openly. I'm Jack and I'm here with Daniel. Hello, Daniel.
Hello, Jack. Hi, everybody. It's good to be with you all.
Yeah, I was excitedly chuckling as the show started because I noticed that you're maybe growing out a mustache, and I totally want to hear about this.
All
It's
right,
kind
all
of
right.
great.
Oh, I'm okay. Now I'm blushing. Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's all good. I get beet red. It's fine. So I am not a hairy person, right? And I have never, ever grown any kind of facial hair whatsoever, like at all. Like,
Yeah.
maybe like a handful of times I've sort of like tried and then I'm like, nah, it's stupid. It's not gonna work. And then like a little while ago, like it had been a minute and I hadn't shaved for a while. And my girlfriend was like, hey, you got like a little mustache going. And I was like, oh, right. Don't really think about that much. And then she was like, well, kind of curious, what's it look like if you grow it out? And I was like, it doesn't. It's the dumbest looking thing in the world. And so then she was like, well, do you mind not shaving it just to see what it looks like? She's like, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, okay, I will avoid shaving my upper lip for a minute or two and see what happens. My kids make a lot of fun of me.
Of
Uh,
course.
they
As
have
they
to.
as they need to. Yeah.
I myself am not a fan, but my curiosity is actually there. So I'm like, like I don't like the way it looks, and I don't like the way it feels, and there's all kinds
Yeah.
of things about it. But my curiosity is also getting the best of me. So I'll probably let it go, like maybe like another week if I can handle it,
Yeah.
and then take it right off of there.
Okay, fun. Well, and that's like I feel that's being able to play with our appearance sometimes is like a good little practice in itself. Um,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh yeah, I feel like there's this me that looks like me. Like I have this version of
Yep.
me in my head. And turns out sometimes I'll like accidentally do like the reverse button on my camera on my phone, and it's like, Jesus Christ, like
Exactly.
that's
Right.
me. Oh wow, that's like
Yeah.
what other people see, but I've got this
Yeah.
like kind of like glamorous like looking image in my mind or whatever, not even
Right.
glamorous, but just like uh yeah, something young and youthful and vibrant. And it's so funny that yeah, but playing with it, I think, is a fun way to do that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Jack. It's such a great way to sort of explore this sense of self, right? I had not that, well, maybe like a couple of years ago, I had a little bit more hair on the top of my head, and I've been buzzing it forever and ever. And
Yeah.
it was during COVID, and one day I was like, I'm just not going to buzz the middle part, like just see what happens. I'm just kind of curious, and
Yeah.
it ended up getting a bit of a mohawk, right?
Cool.
And then I started like gelling it and making it put like stick up, right? So I
Uh-huh.
actually had like a little mohawk going on. And it was strange how it changed my perspective and relationship to other people, right? Like it
It's
was a
so interesting.
right. It's just a little bit of
Yeah.
hair, like, but it changes everything. And I feel like same thing with like clothing, right? Just change out of my ordinary clothing into something different. Like if I put on a suit and tie, oh my God, everybody's like, Daniel, you look so good. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Right. Because normally I'm like basketball shorts and a dirty old tie-dye t-shirt or something. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah, it is fun.
Yeah.
I'm
Great.
glad you
Well,
noticed, Jack.
yeah, of course. Well, I see you once a week, and I'm gonna notice those things. And especially for like men or male identified people, like uh we don't get as much play in appearance, right?
Right. No.
There's less that is typically, allowed or thought of as masculine. So
Right.
it's really fun to actually like embellish a little bit.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Totally. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I wish I was a little bit more playful in that area. I've been coming out of my shell a little bit over the last few years. You can't actually see it. I won't stand up. But right now I'm wearing these like I don't know what they're like, MC Hammer pants.
Oh
Remember
yeah.
those? right?
Yeah.
And they're like loose and they're super colorful and all of that. And I was like, well, everybody on the show is just going to see my top half. So I just
I know I'm wearing PJs right now.
nice.
This is technically not a PJ shirt, but it's it's very comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So we can all be comfortable with each other because we're in our PJs or our PJ type clothing.
Wonderful. As I feel like I always want to be.
Yeah. Same. Same. Yeah.
Other than the stash, what's going on with you? How's your life? How's your practice?
Well, so my life has been rather chaotic the last couple months, I would say, but it does feel like the dust is settling a little bit. Last week I was talking a little bit about how my meditation practice has really been thrown off. The regularity of it has been dramatically changed. And that didn't actually resolve very quickly. So I had this interesting experience where I woke up super early yesterday morning with the intention to meditate before I went to the gym with my kid. And I got up and I was awake, even though it was hella early, right? And I was very awake, but there was still some kind of resistance. Like I woke up in order to meditate. And then like I ended up just like, I was like, well, I'm just gonna lay on the couch for a minute. So I did that. And while I was laying there, I had this amazing sort of like, I was just like sitting there. I'm like, well, what is this? What is going on? Why do I meditate? Why am I doing all of this? And what does this mean to me?
Yeah.
Right? What are all these practices about? Why am I affiliated with this Sangha? Why am I interested in Buddhism? What am I doing? Right? There was this sort of, it was this really sort of like wide open, like, what gives, bro?
Yeah.
And then I laid there for a minute and I had some sort of like some insight into that. Like I did touch on it a little bit last week, but like I had felt this deep, profound gratitude where I was like, I recognize the benefits. I see what's going, I see it. And just because like, yeah, I've lapsed a little bit here and it's understandable. There was a little self-compassion there. And then I sat up and got on my cushion and meditated. And I was like, all right, that's good. I remember how to do this. And this morning I ended up having like just the most beautiful sit. It was fantastic. And I was like, right, yeah, this is what I do. And like, of course, I don't want to get attached to any particular state or any particular meditative experience, but it was profoundly beautiful and set the day off just right. So I'm back in the saddle, but I feel like the saddle is slipping,
Sure.
like the horse is still, it's bucking a little bit and the saddle's not quite right, but I'm in the saddle again. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I remember, I want to ride.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, that we've definitely had periods on this show where there's been those moments where it's like, okay, things are feeling not so kind of disciplined.
Yeah.
But yet, coming back, that is such a huge part of our training is like,
That's right.
hey, do I have the motivation to come back and just do it? Especially, we're feeling that kind of like just wanting to lay on the couch type vibe. And you got up and sat. You got up, and even though it wasn't on the cushion, it was on the couch.
Yeah. Well, that was it. That was the thing is like, it's exactly what you said is like, there was this sort of like understanding of like, yeah, I've gotten distracted. That's why it's not so close to me. That's why things feel a little bit further away or a little cloudy or whatever. But that's no reason to like, just stop. Right. That there's this part of this perfectionism, this sort of like, well, if I can't do it perfectly and I can't do it all the time. And we've talked about that too, right? But there was that sort of sense of like, well, I'm a bit of a failure because I haven't been doing this regularly and whatever. There was a little bit of like that negative self-talk that was going on that was sort of like preventing me from doing what after a little bit of reflection was very clear. I'm like, this is really good. It's good for me. It's good for those who are in my life. And there's no reason to stop, right? And in fact, nothing in my practice would suggest that the right outcome would be to stop my meditation practice.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey,
yeah.
That's it. That's
it. So still working it, still doing it. Yeah, exactly. And what about you, Jac? Yeah, tell me a little bit. You're sick still, right?
I'm technically still sick. Yes, I'm still sick. I've had COVID for about 2.5 weeks now. yeah, it sucks. It just
Mm.
it's um and at the same time it's been like this real kind of like I can't do anything else but just accept it, like what else am I going to do? um and there's been two things, important things to me, that I've missed because of having COVID. The first week that I had it, I missed my grandma's funeral. That sucks. um and then the second week I actually so I had taken Paxlovid when I first got sick, and that's like 5 days of like antiviral medication. um but I guess in 15% of people that take Paxlovid, they get a rebound case. So your viral load drops off when you start taking it. And then I actually tested negative. Um, but within a couple days, I started feeling symptoms again. I tested and I was positive, and feeling kind of crappy too. And so
Mhm.
um, the nurse at employee health at my job, she was like, yeah, dude, sorry, but you've got to isolate again. And fortunately, since I have a long weekend, I only missed one more day of work, and came back on Monday. Still got to wear a mask. But yeah, what happened last weekend was that I missed the retreat that Lama gave to refuge students. Um, and of course, that felt really, at first, it there was disappointment, right? There was like this expectation, like, okay, this is what I'm doing at the end of the month. I'm really looking forward to it. Great opportunity to learn with my teacher and spiritual friends. Um, but then as kind of the weekend got closer, I really just kind of sank into the reality that, like, this is where I'm doing my retreat. This
Yeah.
is I'm just gonna do retreat at home, and also rest and not push it. I ended up exercising a couple days because I was like, I exercise a lot. It's one of my main kind of like coping skills. And so it was really hard for me to not get any like physical exertion. And so I exercised, but then my symptoms were way worse like the next day.
Yeah.
It was like my body was just like, no,
Yeah.
no,
Lay
stop
down, Jack.
it. Yeah, lay down. Like drink some tea
Yeah.
and just sit. So that's what I did. And I have to say it was actually quite beautiful.
Yeah.
I had a really good weekend, and I actually felt the presence of my friends. I felt like we were
Mhm.
all kind of doing it together. Um, and yeah, my actual training sessions, I shortened them a little bit just because uh my body was not happy with me sitting sitting upright.
Yeah.
Um, but I find that with these short sits, I can dive in. I can really kind of set my focus.
Yeah.
I also tried a new shamatha technique of it's where on the breath in, you visualize Om, and on the pause, Ah, and on the breath out, Hung.
Oh.
And you just do that for the whole uh, training session. Um, and
So
that
when you say, so just to be clear, you're visualizing the actual symbols,
the syllables, yes.
or are you in your mind saying
I'm also saying it. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but I visualize and say it. And something about that like really occupied my
Yeah.
it, my attention. I was really with it, and it was like my one round of breath at times felt like an eternity. It was pretty incredible. Um, and so that was just a nice kind of touching back in with like, okay, I can do
Yeah.
shamatha, right? Like I can. It's hard, but I can do it. And it's so good for my mind, this sharpening of our minds. so often I've felt really dull in shamatha, just like the dullest mind. Um, and so it was nice to feel like that's part of it, right? That's part of it, is being dull. And then there's these other times where it's going to be like real sharp and engaging. So yeah, I have to say it was actually a really wonderful weekend of rest and meditation. So even though there was that disappointment, yeah, I was able to use it.
Yeah,
Um,
you got to sit with the disappointment.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Mm.
And one thing, excuse me, um, one thing I was reflecting on too is that seeing illness, and I know we talked about this last week, but seeing illness as purification. So if I can see this actually as like, wow, how wonderful.
Yeah,
I
right.
got COVID. That's fantastic.
I got it again.
I got it
That I'm
again.
so lucky.
I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky I got COVID twice in a row and had to miss these things, because that means that maybe some really awful, horrible thing I did like lifetimes ago is being purified. And this is the only thing that I have to experience. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. I
So
can do that.
you literally did what we were talking about. You were like, okay, I'm gonna like be grateful for the illness.
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Good,
And it
good.
wasn't always there. Sometimes I was annoyed.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
um, but yeah, yeah, I think overall I really did just engage with that, and I'm happy with
Nice.
that. That's, yes, good. It's good. And and my last day of masking is this Friday. So yeah, that'll have been almost 3 weeks. Uh so it's a good chunk of time, almost a month.
Yep, yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And yet it'll pass, it'll be over, you'll be right back to normal, so to speak. And
No, I know. I know. That was one thing I was thinking today too, is that like, how quickly we turn things into permanence, right? Because
right.
um it's really felt like I've had COVID for like years, right? Or like I've had
Mhm.
COVID my whole life. Because my whole life is kind of like the last 2.5 weeks. and and so it really like there's this kind of solidity around COVID right now. But I know that within a few days it's, yeah, I'm gonna be back to normal.
Yeah, and then it's
Or
gonna
normal.
feel like a dream, right? Like where you're like, oh right, that's right, I had COVID. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that one time, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
such a trip.
I think
And turns out,
all the experiences tend to be that way, right? Even the
yeah,
really amazing high points, the super low points, like when we're in it, it feels like it's going to be like that forever and it's always been that way or whatever.
right.
And then a little bit later, a couple weeks, couple days, whatever, and you're like, oh, right, like I'm in a different space, different, everything's different.
Yeah, that reminds me of this strategy that I learned from a patient at the hospital. She calls it 5555. So she says, okay, is this issue that I'm having, or this annoyance that I'm having, gonna bug me in 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 years? And then so she kind of thinks of it like, what's the magnitude here? Am I even going
Yeah,
to remember it in 5 days? And if
right.
not, like, okay, maybe I can just chill the F out. And I was like, damn, that's really good. I like that. I like
I
that a
like it too.
lot.
5555.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like in 5 days, certainly in 5 weeks, like this is going to feel like, yeah, just
Man,
history.
I think I can just stop at like 5 minutes.
I
Like
know.
I tend to not remember much past that, but
I know.
okay, 5 days at the max, but definitely 5 weeks. I can't even fathom. I don't know.
I know. I have no, I like, if I didn't keep a calendar, like
yeah,
I can't remember really what I did yesterday.
yeah, same,
Like I
same.
know I met with some people at work and that was cool and whatnot, and drove around a little bit. But details, conversations, they're not really there.
No, 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 no. It's ephemeral.
Yeah, sure is. Yeah. And turns out it's always been um chaos, just because right now it's the chaos of COVID and missed appointments and whatnot. doesn't mean that it was never like this before.
Right, right.
Yeah, just more obvious, maybe.
Well, I'm glad that you got a chipper attitude around it all, Jack.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. No,
That'll
that's,
help. That'll help speed the recovery
I think
rather
so.
than hold. Like think about it. You could hold on to it, make it more solid, right? Maybe like
Mhm.
lean into it a bit more and be like, no, really, I've got COVID and this sucks. And that might actually depress you, make you more anxious, more stressed, take you a little bit longer to get over it.
Yeah. That is wild that the body, yeah, the body and mind connection,
Yep.
they're working together for better or worse.
Yeah. Hopefully for the better.
Hopefully for the better, yeah. Well, what do you say? Should we check out some Lojong?
Heck yeah, I am on it. I've got it.
Awesome.
Got it right here for us. Can you see my screen?
I do. I've got to hydrate a little bit.
Go for it. You hydrate while I briefly mention that we're looking at the random Lojong slogan generator on the lionsroardharmacenter.org website. You can find it under, if you're looking on the menu, you can find it under teachings and then random Lojong slogan. This is an awesome tool. I have it bookmarked and I use it every day. All right, let's hit it.
Number 3. Oh, we haven't had an early one in a while.
Yeah.
Okay. Examine the nature of unborn awareness. And I'm actually, just because my voice is a little shaky right now, could you read this one?
Yeah,
That'd be
absolutely.
great.
All right, so this is the second slogan of point 2, which is the actual practice. And Traleg Kyabgyon writes, unborn awareness is absolute bodhicitta. It is not a thought, not a feeling, not an idea, not a sensation, and not an experience. To say that absolute bodhicitta is experiential rather than a thought or concept is a step in the right direction, but it is not an experience either. Experiences come and go, but there is a vast, open, and clear spaciousness that does not come and go, that does not have a beginning, middle, or end, which is why it is unborn. It never enters the stream of time, turmoil, and pain.
Oh, thank you.
Um,
Yeah, this is one where I'm like, yeah, I'm still, when I read things like this, I'm like, beautiful. I have no idea what you're talking about. There's like the
well, because it's
little,
not an idea,
yeah, and yeah, like it's
right?
just like, no, there's got to be something, right?
It's an odd thing that I'm not making any claims whatsoever, but I spend a lot of time attempting to examine the nature of unborn
Yeah,
awareness. And there are these moments that I have that sort of, they seem to sort of point to it, right?
sure.
And there are these sort of like glimmers of like, it's just like little, I think the way, I like the way that Lama has described it before. He said, basically like you imagine there's this veil, right? And, or like a piece of paper or something that is covering it all up. And then there are these little pinpricks, right? And the pinprick is just like a little glimmer. It's just like a little bit of the light, the truth sort of shining through. And then over time, you just keep pricking these little holes and at some point, there it is, right? You can see. And I kind of feel like that. Like I've had these like tiny little pinprick glimmers, and it's inspiring, it's encouraging. And it's also one of those things where I'm like, and what, right? Like
Yeah,
trying to
I know.
have some kind of thoughts about it, some kind of concept around it or anything, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
It's transcendental in the sense that it is maybe perhaps like the space in which experiences, thoughts, feelings, all this stuff arises, but it's like not touched by any of that. It's outside of that, but I don't know, like, right? You can't even
yeah.
talk about it.
It's kind of infuriating, which I think is a good thing. I'm glad that I'm infuriated by it because I'm yes, my intellectual mind can't grasp it.
Right.
And I am, I do pride myself in my my ability to think and rationalize and be educated and whatnot. And so this is such a great medicine for me to be like, no, you're just not going to get it.
Yeah.
You're not going to get it. You can't
Right. You
grasp it.
can't get it. You're right. Exactly that. It's humbling,
Yeah.
right? It's humbling. And I think that there's like, I don't know, it's humbling and inspiring at the same time. And there's something about it, that the fact that it defies human description, and words can't do it. I heard someone else has said this. I don't know quite, I don't have the quote just right, but essentially that if ultimate reality were something that could be comprehended by the human mind, it wouldn't be worth pursuing.
Hmm.
Right. And so, I mean, I think that in that sense, comprehended, right, labeled, put into a box, described, and shared in that way, I don't think, yeah, it certainly doesn't seem possible. In
Yeah.
fact, I think that there are, if I'm not mistaken, I think there are different schools that sort of, some say, don't even try, right?
Hmm.
Don't attempt to put words on it. And others say, well, let's try, like there, we recognize that we can't do it, but we still need to, have some fingers pointing at the moon.
Yeah, right. And yeah, also have like a language around our own experience, so that we can kind of share with each other, right? This is a teaching model.
Yeah.
And so at some point, yeah, we do have to talk with each other. And I think we've also talked a couple times about that, that teaching is not always talking too. So
Yeah.
sometimes just being with one another. I mean, I
Right.
learned so much from Lamala, in just his presence, of course, his words as well, but just seeing how he moves through the world, and owns and experiences his, feelings and everything he's going through. That's so much teaching. And I think, yeah. So, but having that language or expression, right? That because we talk about expressions at Lions for a lot. We're not going to get it, but we can express. Yeah.
Yeah.
And examine. So yeah. Thanks.
Examine the nature of unborn awareness. Well, yeah, man, did you ever wonder, like, so if that analogy of the pinpricks in the paper or whatever is a good one, do you ever sort of wonder, like, so maybe you've had a few glimpses, or maybe there's just some sense of like light on the other side. Do you ever wonder what it's like for people who have spent their life poking holes in it? Like, so like Lama, right? Like what his grasp, I don't even know the right way to put this, but how he sees or experiences unborn awareness. Like, what's his relationship to it? Is he like residing in it? You know what I mean? Like, does he think
Yeah,
about
sure.
it?
Yeah,
How
no,
does it impact his life? Right.
right. Yeah, no, that fascinates me as well. And I think too that there's different approaches to the pinpricks, because there might be some people who take like the sutra path, right? Where it's like maybe you're doing pinpoints all over the paper and it's coming in through, many different points. And then like the Vajrayana path, I'm thinking might be like, well, how about we just do like a border around the outside and then let the paper fall fall down. It's like a really quick path.
Oh, I like it. I like
Yes.
it. Right.
It's a really good metaphor. You can kind of get into it. But yeah, of course, I totally am fascinated with thinking about my teacher's mind and experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Well, it's interesting. Sorry to go back to it, but for a second, I couldn't help but think like, well, give me some scissors, or give me a lighter.
You don't have scissors.
Right. Let me punch through it. And there's something about the fact that the experience or the awareness of something, that aspect of it is intertwined and not separated from it.
Yeah.
Right. And so like that it's not like it's not like unborn awareness is something out there that exists independent of all of this energy, this dynamic sort of stuff that we see happening, all these objects, all these phenomena, right? That it's inseparable. It's
Yeah.
yeah. that's hard. It's hard to even imagine, hard to get the words around it. It's amazing.
Very much. Yeah. Oh,
But there's something,
fascinating.
Jack, do you think, I'm sorry, it gets me
You
excited, but do
you love this
you,
one.
yeah, I do. Do you, is there something like, so when you read this, right? And any attempt to sort of describe ultimate reality, do you like, okay, it's, yeah, sometimes it's like beautiful poetry and it can be, you know, it can be beautiful in some
Yeah, I was
right.
gonna say poetry, yeah.
Yeah, but do you feel like a resonance where you're like, yeah, yeah, like, you know, because to me, coming from like a Christian background, there were these like descriptions of God and heavenly states and celestial
Yeah.
bodies and things like that, that, you know, maybe like I found them like imaginative, but it didn't resonate in the sense of being like, yeah, yeah, that's, I believe that that's actually how it is. Whereas with all of this sort of poetic attempts at describing the indescribable, I can't help but there's this feeling inside of me where I'm like, yeah, I know. Like there's
Yeah.
something in me that knows that that's true, even though I can't conceptualize it.
Yeah, no, I think that's really right. There is something within us that knows reality.
Right.
Yeah, we have Buddha nature. We have the ability to experience uh just incredible wisdom that sees reality as it is.
Yeah.
So maybe that's like, yeah, just your Buddha nature being like, ooh, Daniel, Daniel,
Yeah,
this
well,
is
it's sort of
good.
like, yeah, it's sort of like, you know, like when someone like Tralek Kabgyan writes something like this and I read it, it like stirs something in me. Like
Yeah,
it
it is
finds that
stirring. Yeah.
resonance, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a sign of a really good teacher too, right? When they
Yeah.
can stir something within us. And I think that's also why Lama has really emphasized expressions, is because when we hear poetry, when we see art, there's something that gets stirred within us that's not going to be just by reading like an academic journal on emptiness or something. You know, there's
Right.
there's this other kind of resonance that touches something deeper, that really calls on our Buddha nature. So
That's
yeah,
a good point. I'm glad that you
yeah.
brought that up. It's true. It's true. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, and that every kind of discussion around emptiness, because I don't have, any direct experience of it, has to be in some way poetic. Because because there is no like actual language that can describe it. Yeah, that I think it does inherently in some ways have this just, yeah, kind of like, ooh, there's something beautiful about that. There's something that
Yeah.
really touches me about that. And I think also exciting, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, this
Yeah.
is like a,
Exciting in a
yeah,
frustrated sort of
in a
way.
like, this is my journey. Wow, I'm like on this path to learn what the hell this guy is talking about. That's
Right.
awesome.
Right. Exactly that. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna rip that thing. I'm gonna see it
We're doing it.
like
We're on the path.
a
Yeah, we're
drop of
we're all
water
becoming
returning to
Buddhists.
the ocean or something like that will eventually.
Yeah, yeah. Right now at least for me, right now my mind is like a very roaring waterfall, going
Yeah.
through a canyon. And yes, but all waterfalls lead to the ocean. So
You get there.
eventually, yeah.
Well, maybe not
um
you.
maybe, yeah. Not me. No, no. Well, this has been a really sweet conversation so far.
Yeah.
Lovely. And we're the topic tonight is criticism, and kind of receiving criticism, and how we can see that as path. Um, and I can't remember exactly what spurred me to, consider this one, but it's something that I really struggle with. I really struggle receiving criticism, but it's also always been such a teacher. And so I really find it fascinating, and I really want to work on getting just so good at receiving criticism that I'm almost excited to receive it, right?
Yeah.
That it's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, just bring it, bring it. I want to hear that because I know what's happening is that every time I receive some kind of criticism, the opportunity is there for me to reveal that there's not this self there that I think is
That's
being
right.
harmed.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
like it shines a light on it, right? It all of a sudden the self is illuminated, right?
yeah,
And you can, and there's sort of like these different ways. There's a reactive approach, that sort of like defends that territory and defends that self. And
yeah,
then there's the other one that views it, as you were suggesting, as an opportunity for growth and development, right? And
yeah,
to be like, yeah, this is the path. In fact, many teachers would say that I've heard it said, I think it was, oh my gosh, it was it Lama Zopa? I think it was something that he was writing about criticism, where he was talking about how we should view people who offer criticism, whether it's valid or warranted or not, it doesn't really matter. But the people who are the most critical of us, that we should view them as more precious than a wish fulfilling gem,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
they're giving us these wonderful opportunities to see the no self, right? They're giving us this opportunity to develop patience and compassion and
yeah.
equanimity and understanding, and to work on right speech and right effort and all these things, right?
All the things, yeah,
Without those people offering us all this criticism, right, and this feedback about us, the kind that stirs us, the kinds that actually
yeah.
gets to us, that we wouldn't make much progress.
We wouldn't, yeah, because we'd just be surrounding ourselves with people who like us,
Yeah,
who just
yeah,
who want to make us happy, which is generally like, yeah, of course we want to, we typically just want that. Eight worldly concerns, right?
that's
We
right.
want praise, we want
Praise
good
and blame.
reputation, we want pleasure, all the things, right? But but yeah, that like that doesn't bring growth. That's just kind of like,
Jack, can I tell you what? I was thinking about it because I was like, man, I bet Jack is going to want some examples
I
of,
do.
right?
I
And
have some
I,
too.
for the life of me, couldn't think of any examples. And that made me a little bit
Hmm.
sad, right?
Why? Why? What? Because maybe here's okay. I'm just gonna jump in.
Mhm.
Maybe it's that you're actually pretty good at receiving criticism. That it just hasn't popped up. Yeah, it's not memorable to you. No. Okay.
No,
Okay.
no, you're wrong, Jack.
So why do you
No,
think? Why can't you remember anything?
maybe, okay, all right, maybe there's a touch of that, okay. Maybe there's a touch of that, but I think that actually, upon reflection, I think that it has something to do with the way that I've structured my life. So I have received criticism, plenty of it, but primarily the kind of criticism that like affects me, the kind that I can use as a catalyst for growth and personal development. It comes from really like many close personal relationships, whether it's in the work environment or school or wherever, but really like getting in there and rubbing shoulders and being with other people.
Yeah.
And I think that what's happened is that by and large, I've made it so that my interactions with people are more along the lines of what might be called like single serving friends or acquaintances, or in many cases, it's sort of superficial or like-minded people.
Yeah.
There's that kind of thing. And for those who are really close to me, perhaps what they've learned is that it doesn't do any good to give Daniel critical feedback, because he's just going to get defensive, and
Mm.
he's going to get mad, and he's going to justify himself, and it's
That
just.
one.
So I think like that's why it made me a little bit sad, because I was like, oh, like I see how good I see how good critical feedback is. I can see how I've responded negatively to it, and in a non-helpful way in the past. And I can see how it's actually not very present. I don't get a lot of it
Yeah.
And so, and there is some degree of like, yeah, I've gotten better at it. There is a little bit of that, but I think that also it's just sort of like I need to get in deeper,
Yeah.
with people and rub some more shoulders.
Yeah, yeah, and that does take close relationships,
Right?
and trust. And well, even in close relationships, there can be that issue of defensiveness, and then
Yeah,
that person is like, okay, well, then I'm just not going to bring it up.
that's right.
That definitely happens. In yeah, my relationships, it's gotten better, but I would have to say that, yeah, I really am like a person. I want to set the record straight. I
Yeah,
want people to know, no, here's where I'm coming from. Like, I need you to know where I'm coming from. And I feel right. Oftentimes I feel like that, no, actually, like where I'm coming from is right.
yeah.
And
Well, of course you do.
yeah,
Duh.
yeah. Um, and I even if I can see like someone else's opinions, I still just want to be like, but hear me out,
Yeah,
like
right.
here's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. Here's
And
why your perspective is wrong.
right, right. And that defensiveness, like you said, really, um, oh gosh, it makes for relationships that just aren't going to be as open and vulnerable.
Right.
Um, yeah, I've let's see, I've had a couple moments, not recently, but in somewhat the recent past.
The memorable ones.
Yeah, memorable ones. Um, Ones that have been like kind of over the top. But maybe one that is not so over the top is that um, my partner and I kind of get irritable with each other in the kitchen sometimes.
Mm,
And yeah, there was just a moment recently where I didn't do something that I said that I was gonna do, you know? And he brought it up and I was like, but no, I have a reason. I have a reason, right? Like, I'm right.
yeah,
And it's okay for me to back out of my responsibilities
of
because
course. Yeah.
I have
There's
a
a
reason.
reason.
Yeah,
You can
exactly.
explain it.
And that was just such a moment. I just felt later on, I just felt so annoyed with
Yeah.
myself, right? Where it's like, that's so unnecessary. Like, just say, yes, I didn't do that. I will do it.
Or I won't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I feel like that is a real that's a very mature person, right? Who's willing to say, I didn't do it. I'm not gonna do it.
Right. And I'm not gonna
Sorry.
say any more about it. Like that's
Yeah.
that, right?
I
Yeah.
don't need to prove myself, um, or argue why my position's great or better
Well,
than yours.
that's right, because like that like if we're really going to be genuinely present and sort of real, sort of with show up sort of naked and vulnerable. If we're going to do that, then we have to be ready for people to point things out, like, hey, your whatever, your mustache looks stupid, right? Or you didn't do the thing that you said you were going to do, or whatever. People are going to have opinions,
Yeah.
right? And that's a perfectly human thing for people to have, is opinions about us, about other people,
Because
and
we have
how.
opinions.
Right, of course, exactly. And you know what's interesting is when we offer criticism, so when we offer somebody else feedback, it's coming from the kindness of our hearts. We're just trying to help them, right? Like
And
we're
we
not,
expect them to receive it well and to really
yes,
like to
right.
really hear it and integrate it into their lives.
That's right. And when I'm criticizing somebody else's behavior or their language or whatever, it's not personal. It's, I'm just talking about the behavior or the action, right? But if somebody does that to me, it's personal. It's like
Yeah.
you're making a judgment call about my character and you're saying something about my value, my worth as a human being,
Yeah.
right? So if you were to say to me like, hey, your pajama pants look stupid, and really when you show up at the temple, you should be wearing something, you know, whatever, a little bit better, and you should take care of yourself and whatever. If somebody said that to me, I would take it personally, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And yet it is oftentimes, in most cases, it's not personal, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure. Yeah, I've heard from a couple teachers. Most recently, watched a video from Tipton children, that really, the best thing you can do, especially if you struggle with criticism, right, is just like take a moment, just take it into consideration. Just take a breath, hear it out, and kind of assess what is true in there.
Yeah.
What, like, this person might even be over the top, or like just saying it in a way that's offensive to you or whatever. Just take a look. Is there any truth in there? If
Yeah.
there is, if you find anything, just okay, can I accept that? And then whatever is not true, okay, we'll just set it aside. And of course that's so much harder to do in reality, but I like that, because there's this kind of just like approach of I can see that there might be things in here that aren't totally relevant,
Right.
but there is some element here that I can work with.
Well, and
So,
it also points to the fact that when people are directing criticism our way, that one of the most common sort of normal responses is to immediately begin working on your defense, right? Or to begin
exactly.
working on your justification, or begin working on something, and you're not actually hearing them, right?
Right.
Whereas if we can stop that distracted, that noise, that mental chatter, and actually just listen, to like give them the space. There's nothing to defend, right?
Yeah.
The thing that you're going to try to defend is your worst enemy, right? It is this
Yeah.
self-cherishing
It's
sort of
making so
ego,
many
right?
problems for us.
That's right. And so that's why it's important, if we can actually listen to them, hear what they have to say, right? And then once we like actually hear it, then maybe some of the truth can come through, because almost always there's going to be some kind of truth, even if the truth is simply, oh, I get why they have that perspective. They're not wrong. They're just seeing a different facet of whatever happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And uh it's such a trip how when we just pause to listen rather than kind of creating that defense, turns out that people are going to be more willing to hear your perspective. When you're willing, when it feels like every time that I have actually practiced this and kind of reflected, okay, I'm hearing you say this about what I did.
Yeah.
I can accept that. That's true. Yeah, that's true. I did that or I didn't do that. Um, People are going to be more willing to hear where you were coming from. But if you just come with the defense, people are pissed, right? Like,
Yeah.
I hate that. I hate when
Yeah.
someone immediately just gets like, oh no, you don't understand. Like,
Well, especially if you think about it, in many cases, it actually took a lot of effort. It took some guts. It took
oh
something
yeah,
for them to come forward. Like, okay, so for some people, it's easy to be critical, but for many people, it's kind of difficult to give somebody
yeah,
negative feedback,
it's
right, or critical
intimidating.
feedback,
Yeah,
right? And so the fact that they were trying, that's kind of what I'm getting at. I think that some people have, worked up the nerve to give me some critical feedback, only to be
yeah,
met with, all of this blowback, and just been like, whew, never going to do that again,
right, right,
right?
right.
And what a shame. We're like that wish fulfilling gem. We're just picking it up and throwing it in the toilet and flushing it down the drain.
Totally. Yeah, I know. And that is just the typical reaction. It's no wonder, we have such problems with communication and conflict in our world, is that for most of us, we just blow up when we hear any criticism. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
incredible. I want to share. Yeah.
I like the notion of using the critical feedback. So I like actually the idea that, because sometimes it's not valid, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that we can use, or perhaps it's coming from um, um, perhaps a wrong motivation on the part of the other person, right? Maybe they're trying to embarrass us or whatever. It doesn't really matter what it is. but that each instance of critical feedback, whether we think it's valid or invalid or not, is valuable. It's
Yeah.
all good fertilizer, right?
Yeah.
Like we can use the whole thing, whatever it is. And for one of them is like, so criticism can sometimes be conflated with, or it can be attached to blame, right? And there's that notion. I know you are the one who brings out this Lojong slogan often, right? Which is to drive all blames into one, right?
Right.
So when there is somebody who's pointing the finger at you, suggesting maybe that you're blameworthy or that you didn't do what you were supposed to do or something to that end, driving that blame not into like ourselves, like to say somehow like we're bad, but rather into our ego, our attachments, right? Our aversions, our ignorance, right? Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let's let that, let's take that criticism and blow up that,
Yeah.
that misperceived self.
Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately too, like when it comes down to it, someone else's opinions, even if they're wrong, it doesn't matter. It really does not matter. And Shanti Deva, talks about how, why would we rely on the opinions of sentient beings for our own, to be thinking about ourselves based off of their opinions when people are constantly changing their minds.
Yeah,
That is the nature of being a sentient being, is that we're constantly in flux. And so that means our opinions, our values, our perceptions around others are constantly changing. So why would we base our kind of well-being and perception of ourselves
that's right.
on sentient beings' opinions? Instead, we could be reflecting on our teachers and the Buddhas and how they would handle these situations. And I know for sure what that looks like for for a teacher to receive criticism and just to listen. Like
Yeah.
I've seen that happen, where someone is frustrated and kind of like, no, that can't be right. And teacher just kind of sits and listens and thank you for your comment,
Yeah.
and then just
Yeah.
keeps going. Because like what else are you gonna do, like there's really actually nothing else that you have to do. You can
Well,
just
there,
thank someone.
I also like, one of the responses that I really like is a sense of humor about it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and not in a like laughing at the person who's levying the criticism, but laughing
Yeah.
at the silly person, the ego, right? This misperceived self, laughing at that, being like, oh, haha, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Look at this guy, right?
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, thank you so much, right? Like, haha, he's silly. He's whatever. He doesn't, he is ignorant and delusional and all these things. And yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think to some degree people would, they might, on the occasions where I've done something like that, people are surprised, they're taken aback because they're used to some defensiveness. But if instead you're like, oh my God, you are so right. Let me tell you some more ways.
I
Actually, yeah,
know.
you're not, you just pointed out one thing. Let me like pile on some more about this dude, right? And how he, how he's so messed up, right? Thank you so much. People then react with like, it's disarming, right?
It
So
is.
regardless of
Yeah.
their intention or regardless of how they're feeling, they might be like, whoa, actually, I'm not, that's not what I'm saying, right? I'm not trying to say you're bad or no, like I don't know, like I just, it builds some kind of a rapport with the other
It
person where you
does.
actually are acknowledging what they're saying and riffing off of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that can be a really kind of beautiful and fun conversation. And also I think what, you're pointing to as well is that actually I think most of the time people don't want to be in that hardened place of being like, F you and here's what you did wrong, right?
Yes.
And so if we can kind of disarm that, right, which is like a defense mechanism because it's scary to give criticism sometimes, or
Yeah.
you feel like you're going to be fight, but when you can kind of disarm that, then that person softens a little bit. And it can be really beautiful. That
Yeah.
actually happens quite a lot on the in the psych hospital, where it's like people are not well and frustrated, and oftentimes you can get a lot coming at you as a staff person.
Mm.
Humor is 100%, 100% always, it's gonna help. Um, and yeah, so I love that, especially in cases where um, maybe the person is coming from a place that you're like, okay, this isn't totally rational, or I'm not seeing a lot of truth in this. So
Yeah.
yeah, let me just kind of take it on as humor and just let it be. Yeah.
Yeah, taking it on and letting it be is like a form of acceptance, right? Just accepting it. It's sort of like, so I just want to give a shout out to, when it comes to this particular subject, I think that one of the greatest sort of texts that is helpful is the 8 verses of thought transformation. Um, and so like, I don't have the whole thing. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's one particular, the whole thing is really wonderful teachings about receiving feedback and how to view other people that maybe even mistreat us. But there's stanza number 5 says, when out of envy others mistreat me with abuse, insults, or the like, I accept defeat and offer the victory to them. And we can think about that a little bit. We don't have to dissect the whole thing, but it's like what you were saying, that actually we can be gracious and we can receive, whether we think they're right or wrong, we can actually take the whole notion of right and wrong out of the equation,
Yeah.
simply listen, hear what they have to say, accept it. And if it's, even if it's coming from a malicious point of view, right, or from a person who is misguided somehow out to hurt us, even then we can be like, yeah, sure, okay, let me
Yeah.
think about that. We don't have to take it on in the sense of saying like, yes, they're right, their criticism is
Right. Right.
entirely valid, or I'm a bad person, or I
Yeah.
need to
Which you
do something about
shouldn't.
it.
Yeah.
But just let it be like, all
Yeah.
right, okay,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing, I appreciate that, right?
And what's so interesting is that, if you are, still as I am, interested in having a good reputation, right? And getting praise, what will generate better reputation and praise is when you don't fight someone back on stuff like that, when you don't push back, when you just kind of like, yeah, like you said, just
Yeah,
listen and hear people out. um that is so much more respected, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
people around you aren't going to be like, oh, that person got dissed, right? Like they're going to be like, wow, that person really just took some heat,
that's
and
right.
that's really cool. you know
Yeah, yeah. I
it's
heard a
always
story.
like
I
that.
heard a funny story along those lines where somebody said they were at a bar, and something happened where they ended up getting punched by another person, right? And they weren't involved in an altercation or anything. The other person literally just like straight up hit them, right?
Yeah.
And then the person who got hit said to them like, man, I don't know what I did to offend you. I don't know how I could possibly have warranted that. I'm so sorry, whatever it was. I'm so sorry about that. I didn't mean to ever harm you or insult you or anything. Instead of getting defensive, right? They just accepted the punch and were like, whoa, I'm so sorry, right? The other person, the other patron who hit them got taken out of the bar, and the one who accepted it and who sort of diligent or like tactfully handled the situation, that they got drinks bought from all night long,
Yeah.
right? So you're right. People do respect. People do respect sort of like a good handling of these types of situations.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. And we can, in since, and I'm speaking about myself, but since we're not, Buddhists yet, we can kind of use that reminder and be like, hey, if you want to be seen in a good light, do it this way, right?
Yeah.
Cut the defensiveness. It's okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Nothing is actually happening. It's just people's thoughts, right? It's just people's thoughts about you.
Yeah,
Really.
none of it's real.
Yeah.
Well, I want to extend an invitation, Jack, because like I said at the outset, I'm a little bit sad about the lack of critical feedback that I'm getting in life. And so as my friend, I want to invite you to please think about it and dish out some critical feedback. It doesn't have to be negative feedback, but critical
Yeah.
feedback. Anyone who's listening to the show, if you know me, try to figure out some critical feedback and give it to me, because I could really use an opportunity to practice what we're talking about.
Nice. Thank you for bringing that up. And same for me. And also for folks listening, yeah, same for the show.
That's right.
We super welcome feedback of any kind. We want to make the show better and as you know, yeah, best for you as the listeners. So yeah, bring it. We'd love to hear
Bring it. Let's do it.
it. Daniel, thanks so much. This has been lovely.
Yep.
I hope, excuse me, I hope my COVID brain hasn't been too obnoxious.
No, it's beautiful. It's perfect. Well, I'll think about I'll give you critical feedback later.
Thanks. Friends, take care of yourselves and we'll see you next week.
Be well. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.